Hello and welcome to another edition of Truth TV. I'm Lisa K. Donner. On today's episode, the 9 lives of Nicolas Maduro and a handbook on how not to run a coup attempt. Liberty Nation's Dave Patterson joins us. Michelle Maybell, New Mexico Governor Michelle Grisham, and how to make your state a mess in just one term. The always entertaining and politically savvy Sarah Cowgill will be here. And in our Viewpoint segment, how and why universal lockdowns just may not be the best approach in terms of saving lives from the coronavirus. This one you won't want to miss, folks. So stay tuned. All this and more on Truth TV.
Truth is making a comeback.
Wow, what a mess is about all one can say about the situation in Venezuela these days under the brutal socialist dictator Nicolas Maduro. Now a plot involving a U.S. company and an insurgent group headed up by the man who wants to overthrow Maduro has been basically crushed like a bug. 2 Americans remain in custody along with a group of others in this failed coup attempt. What happens next and where do we go from here? For that we turn to Liberty Nation's military correspondent. Joining me now is David Patterson. Hi, Dave, and welcome to Truth TV.
Hi, Lisa. Great to be with you.
All right, so can you give us a brief rundown of what happened here?
Well, from what we know, and it's kind of a mixed bag of information, a fellow by the name of Jordan Goudreau, through his company Silver Corp USA out of Florida, hired a couple of former special operators, Luke Denman and Aaron Berry, to train, organize, and accompany a small band of approximately 50 to 60 Venezuelan army defectors. And he was to lead an uprising. And they were going to go to the capital and kidnap President Maduro and take him to the airport and then fly him to the United States. What could go wrong, right?
I can't imagine. Do you think this is a CIA operation?
Oh, not at all. Nor do I believe any other government agency, any U.S. government agency was involved. I believe Secretary of State Pompeo and Secretary of Defense Esper, when they emphatically deny that any government organization, U.S. government organization, was involved. I kind of like what one U.S. government officials said, that if this had been a U.S.-led operation, Maduro would be facing the Southern District of New York court and probably on drug charges.
That's very funny because I believe that was Pompeo that said that. I heard him say that. He said we would have done it better. But there are lots of players in this, but little in the way of results.
Well, that is a problem, and it generally happens when you have these soldier of fortune operations, pickup team operations that really only go well in Hollywood and Tom Clancy books.
All right, you talked yesterday a little bit about possible involvement with Colombia, Russia. How does this work?
Well, I understand that Colombia is where this team trained. But Colombia has a vested interest. They want to see Venezuela stopped from being a transshipment point for drugs going to the United States and elsewhere. And then you have Russia, China, and Cuba propping up Maduro. So if you're going to discuss Venezuela, it's what do you do with Maduro, and they have to be in the calculus.
All right, now, why is this guy so hard to get rid of?
Well, for one thing, he has a very loyal army. He has entrenched believers in what he does because he pays them well. And you also have, again, this idea that you have Russia and China and Cuba all there propping him up, and very few people are going to take them on.
Do you think this coup attempt didn't work because it was just too Mickey Mouse or too small or all of the above?
I think it didn't work because it was ill-conceived, poorly planned, and certainly didn't have the right level of security that's necessary for one of these things to take place. I mean, after all, you had fishermen who conveniently were in place, but not just fishermen, patriotic fishermen who noticed this operation going on and then notified the authorities.
Yeah, and they ran out of fuel for their boat. They didn't have enough fuel, etc. Do you think we'll get the Americans back?
Well, now it's up to the State Department, as so many of these failed operations end up being. And they're going to be having to negotiate to get our U.S. citizens back. But one of the complicating factors, Lisa, is the fact that we don't have a diplomatic mission in Venezuela. And so consequently, we're going to have to go through intermediaries to do the negotiating.
Yeah, that's really going to be tricky. Any final words on this, Dave?
Well, I think this is a cautionary tale for soldiers of fortune who think they can represent the U.S. to go and do these kinds of things, because it seldom works out well.
Amen and amen. Thank you very much. That's David Patterson, our Liberty Nation Military Affairs correspondent. Thanks so much for joining us on Truth TV today, Dave.
Thank you, Lisa. Enjoyed it.
Truth is making a comeback.
New Mexico Governor Michelle Grisham has been advancing her progressive agenda since election in 2018. Among the items on her rocket docket, challenging the Second Amendment, fossil fuels, and the ranching industry. The land of enchantment, as Liberty Nation's Sarah Cowgill wrote, became not so enchanting. To add a little more fuel to the fire, Ms. Grisham invoked the Riot Control Act and shut down all roads going in and out of one area of New Mexico that now requires a 78-mile detour. Meanwhile, taxes are up, and so is unemployment. In a nutshell, New Mexico is a mess. Joining me now is Liberty Nation's national columnist, Sarah Cowgill, who has her eye on New Mexico. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Well, where to begin? Let's start with the detour. What's going on there?
Oh, boy. Governor Grisham of New Mexico closed down Gallup, the city of Gallup, which is where I-40 comes in from Flagstaff and a bunch of other highways that sprout off north, south, east, and west. It's a major thoroughfare for traffic. And instead, travelers are now asked to take a detour to get around the city of Gallup. Problem is, the detour is 78 miles long across the Navajo Nation. And if you've never been to the Navajo Nation and gotten accidentally lost and tried to find your way out, good luck. They do not have road signs. They do not have stoplights. They don't have convenience stores. It's an absolute mess. People are going to get lost. They're going to end up in somebody's, fenced off sheep yard. It's not going to be a pretty situation.
All right, would you explain to me why she closed this road?
Well, she doesn't want anybody in or out. She's got the city of Gallup locked down. They have a curfew in place. This is going to continue on until Sunday noon from the latest information out of the governor's office.
We didn't even get into the border mess. What is the latest on that?
Well, the border's closed, which is, what everybody wanted 2 years ago. But all of the people that have tried to come across the border that may be infected or sick are being sent back across the border, which is good for our country. But they've had to deal with Border Patrol agents and customs officials, and those people are getting sick. So it's kind of a major mess in New Mexico.
All right, you mentioned that she has trouble with the Second Amendment. She has trouble with fossil fuels. She's raising property taxes.
Right in the middle of 78,000 plus people being out of work in New Mexico since March, she raises the taxes, signs it into law.
All right, I don't know what we're thinking here, but the good people of New Mexico did elect this gal. Does it look like she's going to be elected again?
Well, she was elected in 2018, and New Mexico is kind of an apathetic voter state. And that has all changed since she got into office. The previous Democrats or Republicans that held the governor's seat, usually had kind of a balanced House and Senate, state House and state Senate. And so things were more well thought out. She walked in January 1, midnight, January 1, and just had a rocket docket of just getting rid of everything that she wanted to get rid of with a supermajority in the House and Senate. Now, come 2020, she'll still be the governor unless they can figure out how to recall her. But the supermajority that's allowing her to get all these bills in and out may drastically change.
In the Commonwealth of Virginia, you can only be the governor for one term. What is the situation in New Mexico?
She can run for a second term in 2022. But the weird thing in New Mexico is term limits are for consecutive terms. So if for some reason she loses in 2022, she can run again in 2026.
All right. Does she have any strong challengers in the offing that you see?
I don't see anybody coming up to challenge her for governor, but there's just such an unprecedented amount of people that are looking to figure out how to get rid of her. So it wouldn't surprise me if you didn't see members of the Cowboys for Trump organization. They have a lot of popular people in their organization, and one of them, Coy Griffin, is a county sheriff. So you've got some county officials that might be eyeing that position for her.
What is the electorate like in New Mexico? Is it a heavily, well, I know it's not heavily progressive, but how even is it?
Well, it's New Mexico is a big state with 2 million people in it. Tiny populace versus, states like Virginia, which is a smaller state with a whole ton of people. But you have the folks that are living in Albuquerque and Santa Fe are very liberal, and they're the ones that were active and pushed her into office. Now everybody else, San Juan County is heavily oil and gas. The southern parts of New Mexico are heavily oil and gas, plus you have the border issues on southern New Mexico. So you really have a variety of rural people from the top to the bottom with a little carved out centerpiece where the most people from New Mexico live. They live in that center area, the metropolis of Albuquerque.
Alrighty, well, that is your New Mexico update, Liberty Nation fans. Thank you very much, Sarah Cowgill, our national columnist. Thanks for being with us today on Truth TV, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa. It's always a pleasure.
Truth is making a comeback.
Let's just admit at the outset that we are sick and tired of hearing and reading about the coronavirus. However, there is one avenue of discussion flying under the radar that we really do need to think about. Is a universal lockdown the best way to stop the spread of COVID-19? Well, if you listen to the brilliant minds at MIT and Stanford, it appears the answer to that is no. If we've heard it once, we've heard it 1,000 times. What we're doing in ordering the American people to stay at home is working. Well, not so fast. An MIT white paper prepared by some truly brilliant minds finds that all lockups are not created equal. Moreover, they find that targeted lockdowns are much more effective. In a 38-page analysis, the MIT team teased out the data to see if universal shutdowns lowered the COVID-19 fatality rate. They discovered the opposite to be true. Quote, "Our main result, however, is that better social outcomes are possible with targeted policies. Differential lockdowns on differential risks can reduce both the number of lives lost and the economic damages significantly. We also find that the majority of these gains can be achieved with a simple targeted policy that applies an aggressive lockdown on the oldest group and treats the rest uniformly. These qualitative conclusions are quite consistent." Unquote. How is this possible, and why aren't our politicians paying any attention to this conclusion? Excellent question. Could it be because it's not simple and takes time to understand? Without getting too deep into the weeds, what MIT found out was that a more thoughtfully designed lockdown of the population would result in a lower death rate. In other words, be aggressive in making sure the elderly and those with serious health concerns stay out of the general population. But others should be free to move about the cabin. MIT reminds us that forcing everyone to stop working has an economic impact that carries with it a fatality rate. Bottom line, adopting a semi-targeted shutdown policy will result in fewer deaths, according to MIT. So what does all this mean? The Wall Street Journal may have put it best, quote, Protect the most vulnerable, but don't put the entire state in economic cold storage, unquote. Perhaps it does take a genius to prove that knee-jerk public policy is not the most effective way to deal with this virus. As such, government authorities and elected officials might want to be more circumspect the next time the coronavirus or any other similar situation arises. And that's my viewpoint.
Truth is making a comeback.
Thanks for watching Truth TV today. Make sure to check out our website, LibertyNation.com, and our new Roku channel. I'm Lisa K. Donner. For all of us at Liberty Nation, stay safe and free.
Truth is making a comeback. Visit us at LibertyNation.com.